Hi friends, we have here this time a new poem to talk about, that is Ode to the West Wind by P.V. Shelley. We know that the poet P.V. Shelley is a revolutionary poet, and he through his poem wants to change the dead system of society. He tries to bring out revolution in the society, that a new system should emerge, which is just to make the life of the people easy and romantic. In the poem Ode to the West Wind, he is trying to reflect on the power of the west wind as a natural force which cleans everything which is dead, which is rotten. In contrast, we find in society that we are not powerful enough to bring out the change. We actually become habituated of living the life that our ancestors had been spending. Although it is not suitable to time, although it does not make our life move comfortably, it harasses the right of the people. But we try to stick to the same stereotyped system. This is what is a disturbing phenomenon to P.V. Shelley. And we know that he's a romantic poet. Definitely, he tries to realize the best for the people and for the society. He does not want to live a life of burden. And we can say that we get habituated to live a life of burden instead of dare to change the system. We dare not to invite a change in our life. We are not sure of our power, whether we could change. So, because we are not confident, we are not bold enough to change the system, we are living into a muddy situation for generation to generation. We know that the poem has been divided into three parts, which are to be described as first three parts, where the qualities of the west wind have been described, and we find that each part ends with the invocation, "Oh, here." He tries to invoke the west wind to listen to the voice and call of the poet. We believe in nature, and so does P.V. Shelley. We believe in the power of nature, and so does P.V. Shelley. He knows that we are just taking the power of nature to bring out something new. So there is an invocation, and the last two parts is just to deal with a relation between the wind and the speaker. So there are five cantos, and when the poet has described in the first three parts the qualities of wind, especially the power of the west wind, that it is showing on the sea, on the tree, on the land, we can see in all natural surrounding, west wind is able to show its power because it is powerful enough. So it may make the idea of the poet aspirate in every nook and corner of the universe. That is of revolution, that is of change. It is why in the last two parts we find poet talking about a relation between the wind and the speaker. The very essence of this poem is awakening from slumber. We are in a stage of slumber. We spend our life in slumber. It means our consciousness is in sleeping mood. Although we open our eyes, we walk, we do works, but we do all these kind of things without knowing what we are doing. We are doing without understanding the justification of the works because we are not awakened. So we can say that west wind is going to carry the fallen seeds to deposit them in a different place, to bloom in spring, being safely preserved during cold season. It is what the power of west wind is, that the fallen trees are to be carried to different parts and they are deposited very much, preserved till very suitable time is coming to emerge as a fully grown plant. That is the idea in the mind of the poet, that he finds that still that idea is dormant in his mind, but he wants it to be carried through the west wind to the people, to different society, that it may bloom, it may come out as a different plant, as a plant which is out of the revolution, out of the change of the thought process. So a speaker wants to nurture abilities of people. Now we can say that our abilities have been faded away by the calamities of life. People are able to do everything. People are able to change the total situation, because abilities are very much faded away by the suffering, by the troubles, by the calamities of life. We are burdened by calamities of life, so our abilities remain underutilized. And P.B. Shelley, being the poet, thinks that it is his poetic duty to nurture the ability into the people, that it may come out from slumber, it just he may awake himself from the sleeping mood, and he may start thinking of the change, of the revolution. So this is what the seed is there in the mind of the poet. And here you find that very much seeds of change and revolution are lying dormantly into the poet's mind. But the poets want them to go to the people's mind, that people could nurture new growth. It is not enough for the poet to be aware. Poet is rightly thinking that the people of society must be aware, because revolution is not a kind of individual phenomenon. It is possible only when the whole society is swept of the dirty things. And it is idealistic. First, we can start thinking of the change. We can be mentally prepared to change. Only then we can take a step forward to change the system. Here we can see that the poet is describing stormy clouds which are formed at the horizon. It is all due to the power of west wind. The west wind drives clouds along just as it does dead leaves. You realize the power, how powerful the west wind is. That west wind is driving clouds, and it is also deriving the dead leaves, and it sets the clouds free of sky and ocean. And so it is all the force which we need to realize. It is by the force of west wind we can make change at all places. We can just make the clouds move. We can make the dead leaves move only by our power of revolution. And it has been possible. A few revolutions have been taking place in this world, all because of this powerful exhibition of the ability of the people. So here we can see that the poet is comparing storms to angels that bring rain, and they announce their arrival by fairy flashes of dazzling lightning and reach up into the sky from the ocean at the horizon. So it is just like lightning in which we see the new realities. It is just angelic. It is by divine power that we can imagine everything taking place. So here we find that angel is bringing the rain, and it is just going to flash dazzling light, and we find that into the sky from the ocean there is rain and rain and rain. It is what the fruit of all this kind of geographical pressure is. Revolution is a kind of mental pressure that unless we feel a kind of mental pressure of change, we cannot give birth to just a new society, a new life. So we find the poet describing flashes of light, and he compares it to the bright hair of Mirnat. That is simply a Greek myth, frenzied spirit attending on the Greek god Dionysus. So we find that it is a very, fearsome situation, that we are mentally not ready to see and watch all the just dance made by maniac. It is just a kind of courage and boldness that we want to see, as our eyes cannot sustain the lightning or dazzling lightning, because it is just total change of reality. We are kept into the very much dazzling light to see the world that we have not seen through. And here also, when this kind of just a citation is made, that we are just frenzied to see all the spirit dancing, and then there is an arrival of just a kind of joy. There is an arrival, but we have to dare to see all these kind of things. So here we have brilliant colors, violent winds means passionate, intense nature of poet. So it is by intensity of the mind and intensity of the power of the mind that we can think to that extent. And we can say that here the poet has shown his passionate and intense nature, describing brilliant colors and violent winds. So here we find description of spirits and ghosts, that is supernatural elements. We also believe that these supernatural elements are the possibility of the world beyond this world. And it is above nature, but the power we can take from these supernatural realities, as just we have discussed of Greek myth, and they are already discussed with a view to bring out a kind of change in society. So the west wind is compared to the funeral song sung at death of Eeyore and Sage. Night will become a dome erected over air storm with all gathered might of wind. That west wind is trying to make the funeral to all the dead systems. And we find that on that just a tomb, we can gather the power to make a new system emerge. So from the dawn black rain, fire and hell come. And these are all the things which are going to wipe out everything. These are all the natural forces, including fire and the hell, the rain, which are going to cleanse everything which is stereotyped, everything which is dirty. And when the old and dirty things are cleansed, we can hope for the new thing to germinate. So we can say that here we find the power of nature discussed both as positive force but and negative force. It looks at first stance that the poet is talking about the negative force of west wind, rain, fire, and hail. But no, he is talking about positivism, that they are just very much going to make change and destroy everything which is not essential for our life, which is not essential. As we are just trying to remove dirt from the gold, hitting it, likewise, just our society is to be heated to remove the dirty particles from it, which have cast its originality. So, action of the west wind on the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Sea is also the reflective of the power that west wind has. It looks to be very much fearful that it is destroying lots of things. But with revolution, we should be ready to destroy everything which is unacceptable, which is not suitable. And from that destruction, something new emerges, and we thought of construction of some new ideas. So let old idea be destroyed, let new idea be constructed. And there is a factor, west wind is a factor to destroy everything which is old. And when everything old is destroyed, new thing emerges. So, in that destruction, there is a sense of construction, and there is a positive sense that comes out from the negative uh, work done by west wind. So the west wind announces to the Mediterranean Sea that summer is over and autumn has arrived. So we can say that it is an honest plea to the west wind to infuse him with this raw power to liberate him from the depression. We all are just living into a kind of depression. There is a kind of earthly depression that it is from that positive power everything has been going down and down, because we have been just unintensely moving around the same world which we have created some 100 years back, and it is just responsible for monotony, and that leads to depression. So let that depression be thrown away, and it is only possible by infusion of the power of the west wind. So we can say that the poet is just remembering his boyhood, and he was also uncontrollable as the west wind. The more we grow, the more traditional we become. Now, when we are child, we try to think anew. You try to think fresh. We try to create new. And it is here that romanticism lies. And we are also full with uncontrollable behavior. We can say that here it is just immense amount of power underlying. But the poet is grown up, so he now invites just west wind to infuse that sort of power, because now he does not feel the same sort of power that he had in his boyhood. Now he's depressed and weighed down by the calamities of life. The calamities of life have just blunted our uncontrollable power. And so now we become fearful, we become hesitant to do anything. Now, in boyhood, it was not the problem. That time we were not just under the depression of the calamities of life. So west wind lifts up the leaves on the earth, the clouds on the sky, and the waves on the sea. And so just his idea should be left up. Likewise, should be free from all troubles that bring him. We are in troubles. We are in kind of just fear, and it is why we dare not just take any action. So he asked west wind to make him an instrument and tool of political and moral change. Now he thinks that now he is not able enough to do that sort of thing as he was in his boyhood. So let west wind be a political, a kind of instrument that he wants to change just the moral standard of life and political system as well. So poet asked the west wind to scatter his words on politics, philosophy, literature around the world, as if they are ashes from the burning fire. Now fire is within the ashes. Ashes have covered the fire. And so the ashes are to be thrown away, blown away by the very powerful west wind to let the fire just come out. So the last line expresses optimism that if his poems die and be ignored, that is the very much word winter, there will still be spring to create a new intellectual life among people. It is revolution. We cannot hope for our result in this life only. We are simply just doing or hoping to realize, what we want, and we want to see the change, the revolution. But the poet is well aware of the fact that it is not possible for him to see the result, to see the revolution come through. It is why he only wants to create a kind of awakening in the people, that let people try to revolutionize. Not this time, the time to come. So let a spring be waited. That is very much the optimism that the poet has, and the poet tries to make that optimism just sustain. So we must say that it is a very good thing that we are coming through.